Okay, so day 2 is when we ventured further into the forest. On day 2, like I said, woke up very naturally and very well rested around 4:30 or 5. Again, to the sounds of the forest. Jungle, Nikki. Sounds of the jungle. And what we did here is we got on our boots. So think of like rain boots. But the intention, by the way, behind wearing rain boots is when you are in any kind of rainforest, or in this case, the jungle, there are venomous snakes, and we are very far away from a hospital, right? It was literally an hour and a half boat ride just to get to this point, and we took another hike deeper into the rainforest. So the reason that we wear these boots is because when a venomous snake strikes, when they hit rubber, it's a lot harder for their fangs to penetrate the rubber. And so we wear the boots. When I was in Costa Rica doing my research project, we wore the same type of boots. So note for anybody, also it's very muddy. Sometimes, again, this is the dry season, so not as much now, but the mud is, the soil is very clay-like here. And so if you imagine wet clay, you can get stuck, right? And so if you're wearing hiking boots, it can kind of be a little bit disadvantageous in terms of getting them really dirty and so on. And also we walk through rivers. I think in Portuguese it's Rio. It's Rio, but the R is pronounced Rio, I think, like an H. But little rivers and creeks and things, and so rubber boots are very helpful. We hiked about 3 miles into the jungle, partly on trails, partly not. And we really just had to sort of assess. The first order of business, by the way, you have to find a place that is close to water. Now, I watched Naked and Afraid. I've seen Survivor, didn't really watch that, but I've seen a couple of different shows. And of course, I know that the first order of business when you're in a survival space is to find water. A lot of people think you need to find a place to set up shelter first, but your shelter should be based on water. Now, we were blindly trusting our guides. This creek that we were by was a nicely flowing creek, and it was spring fed. Now, if we didn't know this, we probably would not have freely drank the water, but because our guides were from this area and knew this to be true, our water came from this creek. Again, I'll post pictures, but I did have iodine tablets with me. I did have leptospirosis medication with me, though I'd never took it. But actually, I probably should share like what kinds of safety precautions came first, but we'll get there. So anyhow, we found our area that we were going to build our shelter, and we all had machetes, and basically we just started clearing an area. So obviously I'm in a hotel environment right now, but what we wanted to do was clear the ground to get a nice place for us to sleep. More on that in a minute. And I'll again post some photos, but our guides made a broom out of some of the different material that we had cleared. Once our shelter area was cleared out, and again, we swept it, the intention of sweeping it was to make sure that we got all the detritus out of the way, but also that we were looking for venomous spiders, scorpions, right? Anything, ground bees, wasps, things that could get us in a little bit of trouble. After that, we took some of the downed trees, so not necessarily things like this. Again, I've got better pictures that I'll show you, but we made a table, mesa. And the table is a place for us to put our food, put our water, and so on. So we made a table. There's a really fun story with this, but I made we'll call it a clothesline, but there were 2 trees, and I put a piece of wood across so that we could hang our bags. There are a lot of fire ants, bullet ants, things that bite, and things that we really didn't want to get in our bags. Now, if you look at my beautiful nose here, this area, a little swollen. Ask me why. Thank you for asking, because I punched myself in So in order to get this like to secure this branch to the two trees, I had to take a machete and scrape some of the bark off of the tree, and then kind of section it out so that it was like rope. And you sort of tie it, in like an X kind of fashion around the branch and the tree, and then you tie it in a couple of different knots. And I do not know why I was pulling toward my face, but we can't change the past. But I hit myself very hard, heard a crack. She's bruised, she's giving, she hurts. Fine, we're cool. It didn't bleed, so I was like, well, if I broke my nose, I guess I'll have to deal with it. So built that, hung all of our stuff. And I also want to share too, again, 100 degrees with near 100% humidity. To say that we were sweating is not the right word. We were draining fluid from our body. And so one of the things that I brought, and again, I'll talk about this in, I think, a prep video, was electrolyte supplements. Very, very important. And not only important to share that, but the amount of water that you have to consume when you're in this kind of environment is really important. And Ahmed actually was experiencing dizziness and nausea and lightheadedness and faintness because he didn't drink enough water, and the electrolyte supplements really, really helped him. And so that is important, right? Because again, when I say we were sweating, it does not do justice to how much water we were losing from our body. After that, then the next order of business was getting our fire set up. And so we were taught how to take a giant, I don't know what they're called, but it's a piece of palm tree that falls off, and it's like hollow and wood, right? And we took our machetes and we were essentially scraping like what we would call our like fire starter. So getting a little bit of palm dust, sawdust kind of together, and then we had a flint with us, and we would take the front of our machete, put the flint in the sawdust, and then strike it a bunch of times until we got a flame. I think we could have learned how to make a fire with the hand, I don't remember what it's called, like a hand drill or something like that, where you're rubbing the stick in another stick, but the survival piece, I think, was a little bit easier on us in that capacity. So we set up our fire, and our fire was not to keep us warm and not for light in the evening, though we could have if we wanted to. It was to be able to cook our food. And I'll share a little bit on that experience too, because we did hunt for our food. But nonetheless, when we set up our like palm thing to start the fire, there were scorpions inside of that. And so we inadvertently brought scorpions into our camp because we didn't look on the inside first. Now, our guides probably could have told us that, but part of this experience was being able to learn that for ourselves and to, obviously they're very well versed in this. They caught the scorpion by the stinger, and we're holding it, so we all got pictures and that sort of thing. But and then they escorted it very nicely away from our camp, but really taught us how to think, right? Maybe as we're going through the forest and collecting wood, after that point, you're not just blindly grabbing for wood. And for me, living in a camper, we camp a lot. And we grab a lot of firewood. And so for me, it was a moment to kind of pause and say, okay, I can't just blindly pick up sticks. I really need to be intentional about where I'm putting my hands, where I'm stepping, and so on. So gathered all of our firewood, got our fire started, which was fantastic. And then we all kind of at that point were ready to eat, ready to have some more water, and then also went down to our stream and bathed. And of course, thinking about that, we bathed downstream. I don't think there would have been a big deal because it was a running creek, stream, whatever we want to call it. But nonetheless, again, being intentional, go down further to bathe. So rinsed off and got ready to eat. So we did bring in for this night some chicken, and I'll share how we kind of hunted for other food here in the next video. But after that, it was time to get our beds prepared. So here is how we slept. We went in the forest and got palm fronds. Okay, so massive palm fronds, probably 8 to 10 feet by probably 4 feet wide. And we would layer. Okay, so first we would have to break them apart. Again, I have a video for that, but we halved them. So the palm frond was in two. And we would lay one down one way, one down the opposite way, and kind of just layered. I'd say probably 6 to 8. 8 might actually be too many. 6 to 8 palm fronds on the ground in a row. And that was our bed for the night. No mosquito nets, and nothing really outside of that. No blankets, just that. Now I'll share, my bed was a little bit on a slope, and so throughout the night I would slide down and then have to scoot back up and slide down, but otherwise than that, very beautiful experience. And again, part of the reason that we made sure our ground cover was clear was to make sure there weren't any sticks that were poking up, or leftover stumps, anything like that, and to make sure there weren't any critters. I did have a venomous spider, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about a spider, walk over my leg in the middle of the night, but wasn't overly concerned about that. They're not there to hurt me. They're there to just do their thing. So we made our beds, and then I should share too, I have pictures of our plates. So we went in again into the jungle and found these not palm frond type things, but palm frond type things, and we made them into plates and whittled down little pieces of sticks that looked like toothpicks to secure them, and that's how we ate. So I think I covered everything. After that, it was really just getting to know one another, talking, sharing, connecting. Again, there's no internet in the Amazon, and so my phone was really there just to take pictures. That was it, capture the experience. But it was a night of just talking. Fun story. Before we went to bed, I wanted to read for a little while, and so I had my headlamp, and on a headlamp you have the white light, which as I was reading was too bright, and I think it would have been kind of rude for everybody else who was trying to sleep. And then it has a red light, which was really hard to read the words on the book, but it had a green light, and the green light was actually really nice. But as I was reading, all of a sudden everybody was like, oh my gosh, you guys, there's fireflies everywhere. And there's two kinds of fireflies. The one that we're kind of familiar with, green light, yellow light, but then there's a torch firefly that sort of looks like a flame going through the air, and it's like gorgeous. It's looks like fire just flying through the air. But anyhow, they were attracted to my green light, and so as I'm reading, I decided to lay back for a minute, and when I did that, all of these fireflies were like dive bombing my face to get to this green light. Very funny, very cool experience, very beautiful, and of course, just, something to remember. So anyhow, we all kind of settled in for the evening and got cozy. Now we did have our guides on the outside of us. So when I say we all slept in a row, one guide was on one end and one guide was on the other intentionally, and that is because we were sleeping with jaguars. And through the night, they did sleep with these massive headlamps on. But throughout the night, they would wake up when they heard something. So very vigilant in keeping us safe. At no point did I feel scared or unsafe because, again, these folks grew up in this kind of environment, but their job was to make sure we were safe. And I also thought it was kind of thrilling and very cool, and secretly hoped, but you all know that I'm not saying that we would see a jaguar, but we didn't. Again, fell asleep to, like, if any of you have a white noise machine and you set it to forest sounds or jungle sounds, that. The moon was mostly full, and so our camp was illuminated as it can be, right, with the giant canopy above us, but absolutely gorgeous. And nothing I can put into words. Now, I didn't sleep very well, and that's just because, again, I kept sliding down and having to scoot back up, and my palm fronds, the hard parts, sort of kept closing in on one another, and so I was like sleeping on the hard part of a palm frond, so I had to keep separating them. But even still, beautiful experience. And at some point in the middle of the night, we could hear the howler monkeys. I am not afraid of howler monkeys. In Costa Rica, they were everywhere, but they're relatively small monkeys, but make a noise that sounds like King Kong. And that's just their throat kind of pouches out. It's very, very cool experience, but in the night they're calling to one another, and so it was just really neat to hear them calling. And then at some point, I'll have to find out the name of it because I don't remember, but there was a smaller troop of monkeys that nestled themselves in the trees above us, and we could just hear the fruits and things dropping onto the ground. Again, not worried at all. Most monkeys in the jungle or in the rainforest don't come down from the canopy. When you go places and they're on the ground, they've been humanized, and it's because people are feeding them. And that is, by the way, don't do that. Don't feed the wildlife. It is not safe. It is not a good idea. You are not helping the animal. That's just my PSA. But I'll wrap up. That was day one for us. I'm sure I missed a bunch of stuff, but wait, that was day two. Yeah, you're tracking. I'm gonna do a prep video, and then I'm also gonna talk about day 3 and what that looked like. So until then, love you, bye, bon dia.